I know exactly what you've experienced more times than you can count. You're sitting with friends. The conversation turns to sports. Stats are flying. Predictions are being argued. Names, numbers, rivalries, seasons. And you're just there. You nod. You listen. You smile at the right moments. But inside, you feel nothing. No pull. No excitement. No urge to jump in. And at some point, someone notices. They ask why you don't watch the games. Why you don't care who won. Why you're so disconnected from something that seems to matter to everyone. Maybe they joke about it. Maybe they tease you. Maybe they assume you're boring, antisocial, or missing out. And slowly, you start wondering the same thing. Why doesn't this do anything for me? But I want to tell you something clearly, right from the start. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not disconnected. You are not lacking passion. What's actually happening is far more interesting. Because the reason you don't obsess over sports has nothing to do with laziness, intelligence, or taste. It has to do with how your brain assigns meaning. Most people are drawn to sports for reasons they've never consciously examined. They think it's about entertainment, or competition, or loyalty to a team. But psychology tells a deeper story. Sports activate a very specific set of psychological systems related to tribal identity, external achievement, and vicarious reward. When most people watch sports, their brains don't experience it as observation, they experience it as participation. Their nervous system reacts as if they are part of the win, as if they are part of the struggle, as if they belong to something larger than themselves. For many brains, this is incredibly satisfying, but your brain doesn't work that way. Your mind doesn't automatically attach identity to external groups. You don't feel meaning just because something is popular, loud, or socially reinforced. You look for internal resonance, not shared excitement. That's the key difference. While others bond over teams, scores, and rivalries, your brain is scanning for depth, insight, and personal relevance. If something doesn't stimulate curiosity, reflection, or understanding, it simply doesn't hold you. This isn't indifference, it's selectivity. Psychologically, this points to a mind that is less driven by social mirroring and more driven by internal coherence. You don't adopt interests because others around you do. You adopt interests because something genuinely engages you. That's why forced enthusiasm feels exhausting. That's why pretending to care feels dishonest. And that's why sports conversations often feel like noise instead of connection. Another piece of this has to do with emotional investment. Sports rely heavily on outsourced emotion. People feel joy, anger, pride, and disappointment through outcomes they don't control. Their nervous system rides the emotional highs and lows of the game. Your brain, however, prefers direct emotional ownership. You don't like investing emotional energy into outcomes you can't influence, not because you're detached, but because your system values meaning over momentum. You'd rather understand something deeply than cheer for it loudly. And this often creates a quiet disconnect. You may notice that when others are intensely emotional about sports, you feel strangely neutral. Not superior. Not dismissive. Just and moved. That neutrality is often misunderstood. People may assume you're cold, or uninterested in bonding, or incapable of passion. But that interpretation misses the truth. You don't bond through shared spectacle. You bond through shared understanding. You don't feel close to people because you support the same team. You feel close when conversations explore ideas, values, experiences, or inner worlds. That's why small talk drains you, and why deep conversation energizes you. Your brain isn't wired for constant stimulation. It's wired for meaning extraction. Now, you might be wondering why this difference exists at all. Why are so many people obsessed with sports, and why are you not? The answer goes back to evolution. Group survival depended on unity. Shared rituals. Clear in groups and out groups. Activities like sports activate those ancient systems. They create safe competition, shared identity, collective emotion. Most brains respond strongly to that. But not all roles in a group require tribal immersion. Every group also needed observers. Thinkers, strategists, people who didn't get swept up in the crowd, people who could step back and see patterns, people who weren't emotionally hijacked by every collective surge. That role belongs to you. Your distance isn't disengagement. It's perspective. And in a world driven by noise, hype, and emotional contagion, perspective is rare. This is also why you often feel out of sync socially. When others bond over sports, celebrity drama, or trends, you may feel like you're missing a manual everyone else received, but you didn't miss anything. You were simply wired differently. Your mind doesn't attach meaning to symbols automatically. It asks questions first. Why does this matter? What does this represent? How does this change anything? If the answer feels shallow, your interest dissolves. That doesn't make you boring. It makes you intentional. Over time, though, this difference can turn inward. You might start questioning yourself, wondering if you should care more, if you should try harder to fit in, if something about you is socially defective. But here's the truth. You don't lack passion. You lack interest in borrowed passion. When something truly matters to you, an idea, a project, a question, a creation, your focus becomes intense, quiet, sustained. You don't jump. You don't shout. You don't perform excitement. You commit. And that kind of focus doesn't burn out quickly. It builds. This is where the shift happens. The same trait that makes you feel disconnected during sports conversations is the trait that allows you to think independently, resist herd mentality, and build meaning from the inside out. You're not wired for obsession, you're wired for alignment. And when you stop judging yourself for not caring about what everyone else cares about, something powerful happens. You stop forcing interest. You stop pretending enthusiasm. You stop apologizing for your silence. You start trusting your inner compass. Because the world doesn't just need people who cheer. It needs people who see clearly when the crowd is loud. And once you accept that, you realize something important. Not being obsessed with sports isn't a lack. It's space. Space for thought. Space for creativity. Space for understanding. And in a culture built on constant distraction, the person who isn't easily captivated often becomes the one who understands the most. You were never missing the game. You were simply playing a different one.